In the small town of Baraboo, Wisconsin, after the 4th of July festivities, 14-year-old Christian Steiner went to bed early. Around 10 p.m., his father checked on him and found him peacefully asleep. But by the next morning, Chris was gone. His parents, alarmed, contacted the police, fearing the worst. At first, they thought he might have snuck out, given the holiday weekend. But when they noticed the usually locked patio door was ajar, a detective was dispatched to investigate. It didn't take long for the detective to find troubling signs. The screen on Chris's window had been disfigured, and muddy footprints, larger than Chris's, were found both inside and outside the house. But with no further leads, time passed without answers until the grim discovery on July 10th. The small town was thrust into panic, and a full-scale investigation was launched, focusing on the possibility of an abduction. During the week following Chris's disappearance, his parents conducted their own inquiries, and one name kept cropping up: Joseph Clark, a local teenage bully with a penchant for trouble. But the case went cold, and life in Baraboo returned to a fragile normalcy. That was until just over a year later when the Phillips family, including their 13-year-old son Thaddeus, moved to town. Thad had just started school when, on July 28th, the family decided to watch a movie after dinner. Thad fell asleep in front of the TV, only to be awakened by a nightmare that was all too real. Late that night, Thad was picked up by someone he thought was his father. Half asleep, he expected to be tucked into bed, unaware that his world was about to be torn apart. When he opened his eyes, he was outside, in front of a neighbor's house. His abductor, a teenager himself, led him inside, and Thad, confused and scared, followed. Once inside, the atmosphere changed. The kidnapper's demeanor turned dark and menacing. He threw Thad onto a bed and, in a sudden fit of rage, grabbed his leg and twisted it with such force that the bone snapped. Thad, overwhelmed by pain, stopped resisting. The kidnapper, momentarily lost in his own thoughts, allowed Thad a fleeting opportunity to escape. Thad bolted down the stairs, his broken ankle slowing him, but desperation driving him forward. He reached the kitchen before his captor caught up and dragged him back. What followed was a horrifying series of bone-breaking assaults, leaving Thad reeling in agony until he lost consciousness. When he awoke, the kidnapper was sitting beside him, calm and conversational, as if they were friends. The teenager spoke of his fascination with bones, a chilling insight into the twisted mind that had turned Thad's life into a nightmare. Despite the pain, Thad knew he had to stay alert to find a way to survive. That night, as his captor slept, Thad searched for something, anything, that could help him fight back. But the house was almost empty, filled with nothing but trash, rotting food, and dirty clothes. The pain in his body was relentless, keeping him awake, his mind racing with fear and a faint hope of escape. The next morning, Thad asked to call his parents, clinging to the hope that he might be freed. To his surprise, the kidnapper handed him a phone. Thad dialed his parents' number with trembling fingers, holding the phone to his ear, praying for a miracle. But the moment Thad heard the teenager's eerie giggle from the corner of the room, his hope crumbled. The kidnapper had cut the phone cord before handing it over to Thad, dashing any chance of contacting his parents. Thad felt a surge of resentment, but he knew better than to provoke his captor. Instead, he decided to try and befriend him, hoping to buy some time and perhaps delay the next wave of torment. For a while, Thad's strategy seemed to work. They spent about 2 hours together in the living room, watching TV as if nothing was amiss. But then, the kidnapper turned towards Thad, and the familiar, terrifying look returned to his eyes. The same look he had the day before, full of unprovoked rage. Without warning, the teenager picked Thad up and carried him upstairs, where he repeated the gruesome ordeal, this time targeting Thad's left leg. As the bone snapped, adrenaline surged through Thad's body, giving him just enough strength to lift himself and punch his attacker in the back. Enraged, the kidnapper pinned Thad down, covered his face with a pillow, and threatened, "If you keep fighting, I'll break your back or your neck." Thad realized he had no choice but to comply. He didn't want a broken neck or back. All he wanted was to get out of that house and back to his own. After this latest harm, something shifted in his abductor's demeanor. Up until then, the kidnapper had oscillated between moments of friendliness and fits of uncontrollable anger. But now, he revealed a third, unexpected side of his personality. A strange, almost childlike fascination with mending the very bones he had broken. The teen gathered a bunch of elastic bandages from around the house and pulled out a drawer stuffed with brand new white socks. He seemed oddly enthusiastic about trying to fix Thad, wrapping the bandages tightly around his legs and applying leg braces that looked like they came from a hospital. Layer after layer of socks were meticulously placed on Thad's feet, each one carefully adjusted as if the process itself was a source of bizarre satisfaction for his captor. It was as if the teenager took pleasure in restoring what he had destroyed, only to inflict more pain later on. As the day wore on, the cycle of torture and makeshift repairs continued, until finally, the kidnapper announced that he would be going out for the evening. When he left to get ready, Thad noticed something unusual. A voice coming from downstairs, perhaps in the kitchen. His captor seemed to be talking to someone. Thad strained to hear any indication that there might be another person in the house, but there was only silence. He deduced that there must be a phone somewhere nearby, and his mind was set on finding it. He knew he had to take the chance, no matter the risk, but it seemed his abductor sensed that something was off. Before leaving, he did his best to intimidate Thad into staying put, trying to dissuade him from making any escape attempts. As soon as the teenager stepped outside, Thad dragged himself off the bed and made his way to the staircase. He knew there was only one way down, despite the excruciating pain. He slid his legs forward, much like a toddler would, but the agony was too much and he had to stop. He knew that if he wanted to survive, he'd have to push through the pain. Amid the trash, he found an old wooden electric guitar, and at that moment, he knew what he had to do. Recalling his earlier attempt to escape, Thad repeated the process with renewed determination. He dragged himself towards the stairs, ignoring the searing pain, knowing this was likely his last chance at survival. Luck was on his side. The phone had a long, winding cord, and with sheer willpower, Thad managed to jiggle the receiver off the hook. He dialed 911, and minutes later, the police arrived at the house. In the ambulance, Thad was informed that he had been just 2 hours away from death due to the internal bleeding. At the hospital, he was finally reunited with his parents, and the first thing he told them was the chilling revelation that he wasn't the first victim of his captor. That evening, authorities apprehended a suspect at a local bar, 18-year-old Joseph Clark, the same individual they had suspected in the tragic passing of Chris Steiner nearly a year prior. This arrest prompted the reopening of Chris's case, leading to the exhumation of his body for the examination of his leg injuries through X-rays. The case's complexities delayed the trial for over a year. During this period, Thad endured several surgeries as medical professionals painstakingly worked to repair his shattered legs and hips. Yet, throughout his grueling recovery, his thoughts were fixated on a singular purpose. At the trial, Thad courageously recounted the entire ordeal, starting with Joe's chilling reference to his previous victim, Chris Steiner, before detailing his own harrowing experience. Joe's defense team opted to pursue an insanity plea, with Joe himself testifying under oath that he had no memory of the alleged events and shockingly claimed that Thad had inflicted the injuries on himself. The defense called upon psychiatric experts to support this claim, arguing that Joe's supposed memory loss and delusional state were indicative of insanity. However, the defense's strategy was abruptly derailed when Patricia Barrett produced a worn school notebook from the evidence bag. The notebook contained incriminating evidence that proved Joe had been deceitful all along. This, coupled with Thad's testimony and the revelations from Chris's reopened case, provided compelling evidence, leading to Joe's conviction for attempted unaliving and kidnapping. Initially, he was sentenced to 100 years in prison, but Barrett, determined to ensure his permanent incarceration, sought more. She persuaded Thad to testify again, this time in a trial solely focused on Chris Steiner's case. Yet, before the trial commenced, tragedy struck when 15-year-old Michael Hitch, Joe Clark's neighbor and alleged friend, shot Thad twice in the back with a hunting rifle, motivated by anger over the publicized results of the first trial. Despite his injuries, Thad resolutely appeared at the second trial, intent on seeing justice served. Ultimately, Joseph Clark received an additional life sentence without the possibility of parole, alongside a $21 million restitution order to cover Thad's extensive medical expenses. Kevin Heimerl, the detective who had taken charge of Chris's case at just 13, praised Thad's remarkable strength and resilience. He noted that surviving such an ordeal at such a young age, and having the courage to recount it not just once, but twice in a court of law, was extraordinary. Now in his 40s, Thad, despite the lingering effects of his injuries and a slight limp, has built a life surrounded by his loved ones, including his own family. The events of that fateful weekend are never far from his mind, but the love and support he received from his family continue to be his source of strength. As he reflects on his journey, Thad often says, "I survived because I wanted to be with my family. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving them, and I knew they wouldn't want to lose me." Now, decades later, his experience stands as a testament to the power of love and resilience. Though the physical scars remain, Thad's indomitable spirit has allowed him to move forward, cherishing every moment with his family and passing on the love that saved him. As the years passed, Thad's strength and resilience became a beacon of hope in the face of unimaginable horror. His story serves as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. But even in the shadow of evil, the human spirit can triumph. If you want more chilling true crime tales, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stay safe out there, because you never know what's lurking just beyond the door. Until next time, stay vigilant.